Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Anyone ever tell you to just relax? They tell you that all the time, and it's like, what? You know what? It doesn't really work that way, and Diana Bejasa joining us here today. She's going to break it all down for us because we both don't like when people say that to us, and we're going to talk about how the brain reacts. And with Diana today, if you are not familiar with her yet, she's an amazing woman, mother, hard worker, entrepreneur, former chef, still a chef in the household kitchen now mostly. She's a burn-through catalyst speaker, and she's a coach, and she joins us today. We're going to dive deeper into the whole just relax, but let me have her say hello and tell us a little bit more about what it is you do.
Hi, Jill. Yes. We're going to dive into why just relax is terrible advice today. But I'm really here to debunk some of the myths that we've heard, these outdated ideas about success that obviously don't work for us, and to really help people get to the next level of success by working smarter and by leveraging tools that are actually going to take them to that next level in a way where they're actually able to save time, energy, and stress.
Beautiful. Thank you. Always a pleasure having you here. If we want to reach out to you, how do we do so?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, www.savorlifewithdiana.com. That's SAVOR lifewithdiana.com. Or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Diana Bejasa Speaks.
Or hold on, I've never done this, but here's my phone. I'm going to click on your Dive Deeper QR code, and it works. I assumed it did, but I never really was able to. Awesome. I love it. Whoa, we got lots to talk about here. Oh, free 30-minute masterclass, the chronic stress breakthrough. We have a whole bunch to talk about, and she's helping manifest dreams everywhere. So for today, let's talk a little bit about this terminology of just relax. Is it good advice or bad?
It is terrible advice. Have you ever had somebody tell you when you were angry to just calm down?
All the time.
Does it work? Doesn't it just like
angrier?
Yes. And the same thing I find happens when people tell us to just relax, right? Like it actually can stress us out even more. We can feel worse. We can feel more anxious. And it doesn't stop us from thinking about everything that we actually need to do. So I want to really break down why just relax is terrible advice and what we can actually do to release that stress without losing our momentum.
Absolutely. Thank you. So what's happening when someone says the word just relax? You say your brain kind of rejects rest. Explain this to me.
Yeah. So I thought that I was like such a weird child. And I probably was a weird kid, but I remember being like in kindergarten and having nap time. And for me, it was just like for everybody else, it seemed to be very relaxing and like this wonderful time. And for me, it was like stressful. You know, the lights are off. We've been forced to take a nap. We're told to relax, right? And my mind was just like racing. So for the entire 30 minutes while everybody else is sleeping next to me, I'm just looking at everybody else and thinking, here, look, see, everybody else can relax. Why can't I relax? What's wrong with me, right? Kind of thing. And I'd spend the entire time thinking too about the time that was winding down. Like, oh, now I only have 25 minutes to relax. Oh, look, the clock is ticking. I have even less time now. I'm supposed to be relaxing, and here I am stressing and, you know, just thinking. And I found that that was just how I was, right? Like that even though I knew that this was a time that I was supposed to get relaxed, right? And supposed to rest, that it didn't feel natural for me. It felt really uncomfortable. And I started to realize that, you know, as I reflected on that story, like, you know, for like 30 some years later, that really stress in some ways was a habit for me. And it was also a survival response. So sometimes our nervous system, based on the kind of life that we've lived, it's not built for relaxation. It's actually built for survival. So that is what our body is trying to do for us. And when our stress has been the default state that we've been living in, and you know, I grew up as a kid in New York City, right? Like with all the rush and the hustle and bustle, which can be exciting, but at the same time can also be really stressful. And there can be a point where when we've grown up in that kind of situation, or we've grown up in a stressful place, that seems more normal and safe than relaxation. So when we also find that that success has been tied to proving ourselves, having that stress also becomes part of our identity. And I know that for me, like that showed up as me saying things like I thrive under stress, right? Like
Yeah.
and and thinking that like stress was something that I was conquering, but in some ways not really understanding that there were ways that stress was actually something I was addicted to.
Yep. Sounds just like me. You just everything you say, always and each and every week we speak. It just do do do. I feel like I'm shadowing you. Our lives are shadowed. They're paralleled, even though you're in beautiful Hawaii, I'm in ugly New York. But really, I see a lot of myself in you, and vice versa. So they thank you because you're getting through it and you're helping people get through it, including me. Okay. All right. What else? What else, Diana?
Yeah, well, for me, it was like a wake-up call to realize
Yeah.
that um, that stress was such a problem for me. Like I thought that it was again something that I was conquering and doing better, like able to overcome. But I think that how we can tell if we have maybe an unhealthy relationship with stress is if we don't have a healthy relationship with rest. So if resting makes us restless, it's not because we can't relax, it's because our brain doesn't think that stillness is safe.
Yeah.
And we have to look and see like, am I comfortable with rest? And I'll give a couple of examples in just a minute because what I find is that a lot of times, right, when we're resting, we actually fear slowing down
Yeah.
because slowing down feels like we're losing control. It feels like we're falling behind. So instead of fearing burnout, right, a lot of people who tend to be under high stress, they actually fear they fear stepping back. They fear slowing down. They fear losing control. They fear feeling like they've fallen behind or that they're not on track. So I think that that's something for us to look at and explore, like does does feel does falling behind and not being on track feel more scary than this idea of burnout? Like I find a lot of times we can make things like, yeah, well, like I can just push through the burnout, right? Or I can just get through the stress. I can figure that out. But what seems much more scary as a result is like that idea of slowing down or losing control. And what I find when that happens for us is that we got to look and check into our nervous system and really understand that
Mm-hmm.
our brain, our nervous system, at a survival level, it doesn't care about self-care.
Yeah.
It doesn't. When we're under constant stress, it doesn't care about self-care. It cares about addressing the threat that's immediately in front of us. It cares about our survival. And so as a result, when we've grown up in a stressful environment, when that feels like our normal, our brain begins to trust stress more than it trusts rest. So when our brain is resisting rest, how do we actually recover? How do we actually get comfortable with rest without feeling guilty and without feeling uncomfortable? And so that's why I want to talk about this idea that also that self-care can actually be stressful.
Mm, it really can. Oh, this big word stress. I honestly still feel that this stress, just since the pandemic, it's the stress, the anxiety. I just hear these words so much. I know they existed in the past, but maybe we didn't talk about it as much, right? And now it's like we were told to like take care of ourselves, our bodies, do the self care. But now wait, now it's stressing us out. This is like counter, like yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my nails done yesterday. That's my self care. I feel great.
Good, good. I'm glad you got your nails done. They look
Thanks.
fabulous.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about a little bit about what you shared about the pandemic and how it feels like stress has been like even more a part of our lives. So what happened with the pandemic, just from a big picture understanding of stress in our brain as well, we were all put into a heightened state of stress, right? Like all of us, just by nature of surviving the pandemic, we were all put into a higher state of stress. And not only that, we also were encouraged in many ways to be watching the news 24/7, right? And to so that we knew what was going on because it felt like watching the news was going to give us some control. But the news is
Hmm.
actually designed to fearmonger, right? Like the way that they catch more eyeballs, because again, for them, the success is measured by viewership, the way that they get more attention is by fear mongering, right? By triggering that stress response. So as we're going through this experience that's really stressful, they're triggering our stress response more and more, and we're looking at that as our means of soothing and gaining control again, right? Like what that actually did was put us at a higher tolerance for stress. And it's kind of just like your alcohol tolerance, right? Like when you have a higher tolerance, one drink doesn't do it the same way anymore, right? So you need more and more just to feel normal. And the same thing is happening for stress. Like we need more and more. And so you hear people talking about stress more and more because people are realizing and feeling it more, but they're also not really sure what to do because again, it's been what, 5 years? I think we're almost coming up to the date where like it's been literally 5 years that we've been living like this. Um, and so what I find is that like a lot of times when we relax, it actually feels uncomfortable. So I remember when I worked in banking and I would take a vacation, which I was really grateful I learned how to do. I had a mentor who would really encourage us. She was a female, like she was like, take the break vacation, take the breaks, right? Like they're yours. They're part of your package, even though there was this culture of like, don't take breaks, right? So I was really glad that she told us to take the breaks. And then that empowered us because we got to follow her example. But I remember coming back from vacation and like feeling just this anxiety in the pit of my stomach, right? Like thinking about all the emails that I had to come through, thinking about all the things that didn't get done while I was away, right? This idea that like I was falling behind while I was resting. And so I would come back from vacation, I would feel more anxious, I'd feel more stressed, I'd feel like I needed a vacation just to catch up, quote unquote, right? And so I think that there's something for us to look at if we find that sometimes like rest is making us anxious, right? It's because if rest is making us anxious, then it's not self-care. It's actually stress in disguise.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not a big into like the resting, and then when I do, I feel like I'm not. I do feel not productive. I mean, I just feel like I'm wasting my. I just think I'm always on the go, and I think that's just who I am. And I think some people can't physically like rest. Honestly, I just don't think it's okay to try, but it's not working. You can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so why that is because our brain doesn't just turn off because we put this break in our schedule, right? So when real stress is hitting us, right? Taking a break isn't going to stop it because what happens after is the catch up, that inbox overload, the guilt that we feel for taking a vacation in the first place while everybody else was working, right? So when we rest and we don't have safety, that's not rest, it's just another stressor. So when we come back from a vacation feeling worse, it's not because we didn't relax enough, it's because our brain never stopped working.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the thing about that too, right, is like when we're taking a break, we want for it to actually be self-care, right? But if our mind is running this marathon the entire time, then it's not, right? So we actually need to figure out how to give our brain a rest that feels comfortable, right? Because otherwise the time off doesn't help, right? The time off isn't useful. Like what we actually need is to take our brain offline, to take our nervous system offline in a way that feels comfortable, where we can actually power down. And then that way, as a result, we can come back feeling more rested. Because I mean, I think I've probably shared this before, but I remember really learning this lesson about rest in another way when I was working out with a personal trainer. And so I thought, like he gave me like 3 sets to do of like 12 reps or whatever. And instead of wanting to rest between the sets, I wanted to power through the first set right into the second set, right? And he told me not to, and he'd often told me not to do that. But this time, I think he was a little fed up with me and he told me, he's like, all right, just
Yeah.
do what you want, right? And so that second set, what I found was that I fatigued faster and my form was not as sharp, right? And it just didn't feel as good as the first set when he asked me to kind of like reflect on the experience, right? And I was like, yeah, like, I was tired, like I didn't do as much as I normally would be able to do, like my form was off, and he was like, yeah, like that's why you rest, right? And
Told
so
you.
started to, yeah, he's like, I told you, right? I started to realize that rest was productive. and that rest is actually something that helps us to perform at our peak, right? Because then we give ourselves this chance to take a break, to let our muscles rest so that they can come back on and work fully. And then, so when I did that last set, right, that third set after resting like I was supposed to, like he'd been telling me to, right? Um, I came back, right? And I was able to finish the 12 reps and to do them with proper form and to feel really powered, like I was powering through it in a really constructive way. So it's kind of like the same with sleep, right? Like if we're not sleeping well, like how do we show up for work the next day? Do we show up our best self? Do we show up doing really well? Like no.
Yeah. This is confusing. Okay. Yeah. So distress sometimes is slowing you down, right? But we need to de-stress without slowing down. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So when trying to force rest, when traditional self-care isn't working, we've got to figure out, okay, there's got to be another way, right? And that's my thing. Whenever I come across a problem, I'm always like, okay, there's got to be another way. There's got to be a smarter way. There has to be a solution here, right? Like
Yeah.
anytime we have a problem, like that's why my signature course is called the Infinite Solutions Formula, is because I believe that for every problem we have, there's got to be a solution. And it's just a matter of, yeah, because I'm also a math nerd, looking at the problem and applying some form of process to it to get there, right? So when it came to stress and me realizing like, okay, I can't rest, I can't take a vacation, I can't sleep, I can't even get a massage without feeling more tense. Like I'd literally sit on the massage table and I would like tense up more because I would be thinking about the money that I was wasting getting a massage and letting the time go down while I'm still stressed out. So that was like my level of stress before, and I found that like straight up meditation didn't make it any better because then, like you are intended to be just with your thoughts, but when your thoughts are just running through your mind, it can actually make you feel worse. So one of the things that I found that really worked for me was energy psychology through the form of EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. And what this did for me was it helped me to actually relax, even in states where I was like, say at a 10 of like stress. And I remember like having a client who had felt the same way. She was like, I run at like my anxiety runs at like a 10 all day long. Like I'm just constantly anxious. And so we did this little exercise, which I'm going to walk us through today
Oh,
as well. And we were actually able to get her down from that 10 to a 1. And it took like less than 10 minutes. So we have less than 10 minutes. We're gonna try this out.
okay.
Because what I think is, and what I found is that our body and our brain just needs a better off switch. We don't need more rest. We can actually get more relaxation done with less time. So instead of burning out because we're working too much, we actually will avoid burnout because we know how to turn off the stress. And instead of forcing relaxation, this is a way to actually transition out of the stress so that it actually allows us to get out of there. And for people like me who found like meditation to just be like too noisy in my own mind, EFT, energy psychology, tapping, this works because it actually gives our brain and body something to do and we feel like we're still being productive in rewiring our stress. So the first thing we're going to do, right? And so we did a little bit of this last time, but again, this is just working with our acupressure points and stimulating them. And so instead of using needles, we're actually using our hands. And what I love about this is that we can do it anytime, anywhere
Okay.
for ourselves. So we're going to first tap on the side of the hand. So to find that point, you're going to bend your fingers, follow this line all the way to the side of your hand. And right where you have this like fleshy part, you're just going to tap there.
Okay.
Just notice the stress and anxiety in your body. Maybe give it a rating right now based on where it's at. And you're just going to tap here, maybe 10 to 15 times. You can use 2 or 3 fingers. Be really gentle.
Mm-hmm.
And then next point we're going to touch on is the eyebrow point. So right where the eyebrows begin, you can use 1 or 2 fingers, 3 fingers. You can do one side or the other side. It actually doesn't matter. And just breathing and just imagining the stress like kind of washing through your body. Now tapping on the side of your eye. So this is where your temple, like where that soft spot of your temple is. So you're wanting to touch right like where the bone is and just really gently. You can use one hand, 2 hands, using about 2 fingers, tapping about like 10, 15 times. And then we're going to go to under the eye, which is right where the eye socket is. So right where that tender spot is with your eye socket, right on the bone there. You're not poking your eyes out, just gentle, two, three fingers. And you know what I found too? Was actually this helped with healing and it actually helped my face look younger. So when I look at old pictures of myself, this tapping actually helped rejuvenate some of like it brought more life and energy to my face. So it's kind of crazy, but um it also really helped with my stress. So when we're feeling really stressed, this is something we can do now. Under the nose, just tapping two or three fingers. And you may already feel like, like I was feeling really stressed, but it actually, my mind is feeling clearer. And that's important because it actually allows for us to make better decisions when we have less of a fight or flight response and more of a like calm brain. So you'll be able to make better decisions and feel better. So now we're going to tap on the chin point, two or three fingers right under your lip. And each of these is connected to a different meridian, an energy meridian or a body point. So it's actually really fascinating to get to learn. And then they also are connected to different emotions. So now we're going to tap on the collarbone. So the collarbone is about an inch diagonal from your collarbone notches, right? Like that pointy point part. So you move an inch diagonal towards your armpits and you'll feel like a groove.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either tap there or you can rub there, whatever feels better for you. And so I learned this. I have a mentor. I don't know if she's 70 or 80 already, but she's a 70 or 80-year-old woman with lupus. She's still a practicing clinical psychologist, and she uses this on herself for self-healing as well. So this is like a really powerful healing method for all sorts of different stuff. And for me, like where I was when I discovered it, it was really for stress.
Wow.
So next, we're going to tap under the arm. So that's about a hand's distance from your armpit or where for women, where our bra straps are, our
Mm-hmm.
bra line is. And you can cross your hands. You can do it this way. One hand, you can do two hands. And there are advanced forms of this that I've actually used for myself and for clients with PTSD, for anxiety, for like all different stuff. But we're just doing a quick experiment to feel the difference.
Yeah.
Um, Even clients I've had with cancer and things like that. So tapping now on the top of the head, use your whole hand. Just tap on the top of your head. And these are just 9 different energy meridian points that by stimulating, you actually get some of that stuck energy out. So you can go ahead and stop tapping. Take a couple breaths, so 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And you may feel like I already feel like some tension that I had in my neck and my shoulders. I'm like, oh, that feels a little bit more free, or you might find it's a little easier to breathe. Some of the physical things that happen that can actually be measured before tapping and then after, people will experience a decrease in cortisol, an increase in heart rate variability, which is a measure of well-being and of course cortisol is the stress hormone. So there are actually ways that we can actually measure this decrease and more peace in our body. And when our body is like that, it's less likely when we're not in distress, we're not continuing to create dis-ease, right? So that could be disease, but that can also be just like disease of the mind, that anxiety, the stress, the depression. So there are all these ways that we can actually like calm ourselves. And I'll tell you, from years of doing this, uh, like my life changed. I'm not the same person anymore. So that person who couldn't sleep before, like for years, like I struggled with sleep like my whole life. The person who couldn't vacation now I'm like, all right, like let me like just rest on vacation. I can actually meditate, right? And like my whole life changed when I started to implement this. And it's why it's part of like my teaching and why I wanted to get a chance to practice it today. So if you're listening and this clicks for you, if you can imagine, like, wow, what if life could feel better? What if I
Yeah.
stress was in control? Um, Book a consultation with me. So you can find that on my website. You can check that QR code, or if you're not watching and you're listening, that's www.savorlifewithdiana.com. And we can do a consult and talk about your stress and have this experience of release so you can become the person you really are meant to be.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Diana Bejasa, diving deeper. Tell us how we contact you directly, please.
Yes, www.savorlifewithdiana.com, SAVOR lifewithdiana.com. You can also connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at Diana Bejasa Speaks. But before we end, Jill, I'm wondering, did you feel a little
I
different
feel
and better?
good. I feel really relaxed right here. And then
Good, good,
this,
good.
this you got me. How long did it take for you to notice? Like, how often are you doing this? For how long a day? Did you feel this?
You don't really need to do it for more than like 5, 10 minutes a day.
So I
And
just had my doctor friend. He took blood out of my arm. He spun plasma, and he actually
yeah,
injected it here. He says it'll help you look more youthful. I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me? I could just be tapping myself right in this area.
yeah, yeah. So there's like a lot of people who will comment like, "Oh, like wow, your body or your health seems like so like you seem younger than I used to." A lot of them like so when people were doing these tapping points like in ancient China, I guess, they found that it actually affected the way that they appeared as well. And because what you're doing is you're stimulating blood flow into your face, right? So all this like muscle atrophy, this tension actually begins to leave, and you can look even younger and happier and better and feel even younger, happier, and better. Like not just on the outside, but also on the in.
Beautiful. We love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here again. Always a pleasure having you, and always great topics. Just relax. She'll be back next week. I'm joking. She will, but not the just relax part. All right. Thank you so much for today. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Thanks, Jill.
Enjoy the week, sweetheart. Bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.